check. Hey, how's everyone enjoying themselves? Good?
Wow, great.
Well, I see some of you have been engaged since the morning till now. Like, that is fantastic. Well, you know, we're going to bring things to a crescendo over here. We're here with Kevin Mayer. Look, let me set this up right. In the morning, I'm going to update him as well. Because in the morning, we talked so much about Kathy Wood and Tiffany Zhang with kind of Web3 as well as like public markets. And later on, we talked a lot about the roles of government. We talked a lot about NFTs as well as like sneakers. But one connecting thread between each of the panels is the role of media and culture, media and shaping culture. So this panel is like gonna be super fun because like I'm like preciously nabbing Kevin Mayer right here because there are not many people who have transcended big media, multi-generational influence with Disney, and a stint with TikTok. Yep. That's the CEO of TikTok. And right now, doing so many different things within media. So you gotta, first, let's start this off. Update us about your journey so far, especially your recent journey, and what are you up to?
Well, I'm up to a lot of things. I had 26 years at Disney, as you said. That was quite a ride. Got to launch Disney Plus and ESPN Plus and run all the direct-to-consumer stuff and do some deals. You know, bought Marvel and Star Wars and 21st Century Fox, and that was my job for a long time.
You reinvented Disney from Mickey Mouse to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I am a super fan, right? So that is a great deal.
Yeah, I did. I had a good run at Disney. I will say that was fun and it was engaging, and I think we served our audiences really well, which is the key to any good business, is serving your customers as best you can. Left Disney, went to TikTok for a few months. CEO of TikTok, Chief Operating Officer of ByteDance, which is the parent company. That ended quickly, and it was a very interesting ride. We could spend a half an hour talking about that, so I won't bore everyone with that one. But I learned a lot there and saw a lot in that short time.
We did talk about the influence of politics in tech and business. So yeah, let's save that for another panel, but please continue.
There's politics, there's geopolitical rivalries, there's intense debates going on both sides. You know, but it's not all a U.S. problem. China has its issues, obviously. They probably talked about it earlier. I wasn't here. But moving on from that, I'm doing a few things now that are pretty interesting. One is I'm chairman of this company called DAZN, D-A-Z-N, and it is a sports streaming service, very much like ESPN Plus was in the U.S., but it's mostly in Europe and Asia. We have a little bit of activity in the U.S. with boxing, but it's a very interesting thing. It's by revenue, by far the largest sports streaming service in the world, and it's really cool. We can talk a little bit about that. I've worked with Blackstone to pull together some private equity money from them and their LPs, and I've ventured to create a new media company that is built for the age that we're talking about here, with Web 3.0 squarely in mind, and keeping and kind of straddling the old media, new media storytelling techniques, which has been pretty interesting. We bought.
And what's that called?
Well, we don't have a name for it yet. We're going to announce that in the coming weeks. We have a name. Aventine is what I was announced as. That's our holding company, LLC name. It's not really the name of the company. But we bought Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine. We bought a very substantial children's IP company called Moonbug, based in London. For those with small kids, you'd know of Cocomelon and Blippi and Little Baby Bum, all that IP, which is now, I think, the most vibrant and connected IP in the kids universe, more so than anything at the other media companies. We now own that, so that's fun, and we're growing that. I'm the co-CEO of that company. I'm chairman of DAZN.
All I know is Baby Shark, you know what I mean? And I've...
Exactly. Are we getting shout-outs from the audience? Okay, cool. Bring it on. Let's hear it. And then I'm doing a few other things, but those are the main things.
I think like connecting those dots as well. Yeah, with the SPACs as well, right? The SPACs are separate from the Aventine stuff.
It is totally separate. Yeah.
How would you connect the dots between what you're doing?
Well, they all come from, look, if you look at Aventine and you look what we're doing there, that is, the stated mission is to straddle content, commerce, and technology. And I think that if you look at where content is going, it is definitely, there's film and television that's sold through streaming. Yes, that's a big part of what content is today. And I think if you look at the traditional media companies, it's film and television. That's what they do. And it's great business. The demand for that content is growing very substantially for as long as I can see. Certainly for the investable horizon, it is growing rapidly. So it's taking advantage of a growing market. And being an independent provider of film and television today is more valuable than ever because Hollywood has become vertically integrated. I did that actually at Disney. We took everything that Disney creates, every single piece of creative output from Disney, whether it be branded Disney or Marvel or Star Wars or ABC or FX, which is our Fox thing we bought from Fox, or ESPN, they all end up in one of the streaming services. And they're not available to be licensed by third parties. So Netflix used to have access to our movies. They no longer have access to them going forward.
You almost like all of the assets, but split them little parts and it will spread around the world, but you're like, hey, no, let's kind of pull it all back.
That's exactly what we did. And because we did that, all the other big Hollywood studios are doing the same thing. I am advising Discovery, actually, one of the things I am.
It's like taking back the power in a way, right?
It's taking back the power and giving it to consumers is what it's really doing. And one thing that technology has done is it has shifted authority from producers and distributors to consumers. They can consume what they want, when they want it, on the time and place and device of their choosing. That's a huge deal.
How do you feel about like the Netflix or Amazon with Netflix originals or Amazon originals? Like how's that, work in that flux?
Well, having all originals means is that it's the place where the content was first aired, and it's exclusive to that platform for a period of time or for perpetuity. So something becomes an original, and if it fulfills that criteria. So look, people subscribe to these services for the content, and no other reason. Video content is exclusive by its nature. For the most part, now we have. With the stuff I have bought with Moonbug is not exclusive because we have so much leverage because it's such a popular IP that we were able to do non-exclusive deals. But by and large, Netflix has its own exclusive content, Disney has its, HBO Max has its, and they source it from their sister studios. But they don't all have sister studios. If you're HBO Max, you got Warner Brothers. If you're Disney, you have all those studios. But if you're not one of those, if you're Apple TV Plus, you come to independent providers like what we're building, and that's why there's such a demand in that space.
Wow. I mean, like kind of understanding the investment opportunities as this type of media landscape evolves is fascinating to me. I'll tell you something interesting about Kevin. We met at the F1 party in Singapore a long time ago.
Great party.
Yeah, it was cool. And kind of like to actually have folks like Kevin out there in Singapore and kind of sharing insights on global audiences, I think was key to a lot how Disney became such a global company and that transformation to become a more global company. TikTok, of course, but right now, even with DAZN, right? I'm pronouncing it right? DAZN, sorry. Is that most of the revenue and audiences come from Europe and Asia.
Correct.
Right? And so I think now connecting this dot with some of the cultural movements, say Shang-Chi, sporting a jacket over here, or Crazy Rich Asians, or Slumdog Millionaire, or Black Panther, or 88 Rising, I feel like there is a significant advantage for global cultural awareness to inform the future of opportunity. So, and you live that, right? So how do you see that kind of take us further? Like, how do you see that taking us further?
Well, it's the global nature of production and of content is definitively has happened already. It's not even forward-looking. That's already happened. I mean, look at what Netflix is doing. They're sourcing product from Israel. Those of you who saw Fauda, for instance, and that's an Israeli production, and it was one of the most popular productions on Netflix. Squid Games, obviously. I mean, you can go through and march through, and the Money Heist, and all the things that they're doing that originated in other countries, but have become massively popular globally. So it's not Hollywood is no longer. Is not the place where all of this global content happens. Now, a lot of it does, and there's still content of global appeal that emanates from the U.S., but these local productions are becoming more and more important as local production quality has increased so dramatically. And local audiences love have a certain preference for their own product, but a lot of that product is global in nature. So you're seeing a multifaceted sourcing of globally relevant content.
It's so exciting because it's almost as though diversity is suddenly big business, right? To have like, say, Kung Fu Panda, right? You can sell to the American audience and a China audience, for example. You get a more global audience. You get so many of these examples, which is just market forces driving a more kind of globalized world. We like to see ourselves represented on screen, not just watch like the local dramas, but kind of see some of these things as well. Yeah. What do you think people are missing about? What do you think people are misunderstanding about big media? Everyone's all like UGC and TikTok and all that. How about big media? What are people getting wrong about the investment opportunities there?
Well, I'm not sure they're getting it wrong or right, but I will say that TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, UGC platforms are awesome. They are very entertaining. They are, it's bringing out the creativity of the audience. They're extremely profitable because, platforms don't have to pay for content, generally speaking. Although YouTube does. YouTube does a pretty good job. They pay 45% of their ad revenue, or 55% over to the creators. But by and large, you don't have to take these big bets that may or may not pay off, in a fixed cost way. So they're very fundamentally different. But what big media does, the traditional media does, is they do storytelling. And there's not a lot of storytelling on TikTok. There's a lot of fun snippets. There's a joke here and there. There's a dance that's great. There's a tennis tip. I'm a tennis fan. I get a lot of tennis in my For You feed. But there's not a lot of storytelling in the beginning, middle, end, that's either dramatic or it's comedic or something like that. And that's what big media does. And just because UGC is becoming popular doesn't mean it's the end of big media or the end of traditional storytelling at all. They both will coexist. Now, there'll be a contention for people's time. There's no question, time and attention economy, is crucial. And some of these UGC platforms, the successful ones, have taken time away from what otherwise would have been spent on storytelling. But they're still both very important and very different, actually.
We've at 500 Global, we've made investments in some startups which want to make those bridges as well, like they create their own kind of a cluster of their own UGC type community, but hope to source the stories that are really taking off and sell those into big production as well. So I think that the bridges are being made over here. With the kind of like the time we have left, and we're gonna max out the time slot a little bit, right? Is that there's a part of like Disney, like my wife is just like, when she wants to feel better, she just literally just gets on and watches like Disney stuff. And
that's great.
Yeah, and there is like a part of big media and storytelling that touches our hearts. For the next generation, I know we've got kids, right? I think Chase is like a beautiful human being. Like we're just to meet Chase, and like, where do you think big media and UGC, that kind of flux, is shaping the next generation? Are they going to be better humans than us? Right? Like, where's the responsibility in that? Or is it just like clickbait and, selling more XYZ revenues, right? Like,
well,
you're a parent.
That's a pretty fundamental question. I'm not sure that we've cracked that one yet. I do think that people sharing their lives and authentically sharing of themselves like you do on UGC and platforms like TikTok can be a force for good. It can also be not a force for good. And it kind of reflects the overall what society is. Some things lead to good outcomes. There's some bad dynamics. I think it's hard to steer those ships in a certain way because TikTok is an algorithm for sure, but the algorithm detects what you like and kind of feeds what you like already. So it doesn't fundamentally change your point of view. It just kind of reinforces it in some ways. And I think in Facebook you've seen the same thing. These people end up lining up with the things that they already believe in, and they get fed more and more of that. And I just don't know how you overcome that. It's a tough one.
Yeah, because in a world where you grow up with, like I grew up in Malaysia mostly, and we had 3 TV channels. You just watch what you're fed. That could be used for good or evil, but for the most part, like Sesame Street, I thought that was pretty okay. I learned the alphabet at least, right? I watched The Simpsons. People say I sound like Bart Simpson. I don't know if that's true. Said, where do you learn English?
Now that you mention it, I hadn't thought about that.
I learned English from my parents and a lot of Simpsons, right? So I feel like, but for the most part, right? Like if you've got like kind of like a big media controlled world, there's like good and bad to that. And now we got this UGC and big media world, good and bad to that. I've started to observe that there are narratives which divide us, and there are narratives which unite us. I just don't know who's winning. We have even in the U.S. like there's people may argue it's a very divided country right now. But if you take it into an international level, so many divisions, so many axes of division between people. That's something I'm concerned about.
I think it's right to be concerned about. I don't know that social media is going to be a cure for that. I don't know what is going to be a cure for it.
I'm skeptical about that.
I have some skepticism there because remember, social media exists. There's all these feedback loops, and these feedback loops tend to reinforce existing preconceptions that people have, not the other way around. It could have gone the other way, I suppose, in theory, that hearing a bunch of competing voices because there's a huge amount of voices out there. That diversity of voice could have fed a more open-mindedness to the world and approach to the world. It's gone the other way. Clearly, that feedback loops have caused tunnel vision more than it has expansiveness. How to change that that's a tough one.
Did you exert media control over your kids?
Well, yes. Well, that's what parents' jobs are. So probably my kids will end up sharing at least some of the points of view of the world that I have because of that, because I do my own editing. and we all do sit
I
down
love
with our
that.
kids. I mean, so they see things that I agree with more than they see other. But the educational institutions in the U.S., at least the ones my kids are going to, they're creating a different point of view than I had. I mean, we had a very traditional, 40 years ago when I was, a kid, or maybe 50 years ago, whenever it was. There was a certain line that was fed to everyone, especially in the United States. The history told one story. It was all about Western Europe, and it was all about how the U.S. could do no wrong. We are being asked to leave.
I know that is.
But that's changed pretty dramatically, and education does have a huge impact on kids, and the diversity that is now being taught, and the different points of view, and other narratives other than the one that I've been told my whole life, and maybe you were told in Malaysia, I don't know. That is different and much better today, I think, than it was.
Yeah, hopefully we're all on the right side of history, and if anything, the war on the attention economy, like you've got EdTech as a space for investing, but you've got media as well, and then there is like a market share of attention that will divide. So with that, all of the VCs and investors and LPs in the room, hopefully we can have that lens as we traverse media and investing opportunity and our responsibility to shape the next generation. Kevin?
That was fast. Thanks,
What a
man.
pleasure. Okay, thank you, everybody.